All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into one of the most ambitious and, frankly, one of the most secretive construction projects in modern history, a hidden industrial empire built on paranoia and the very real threat of nuclear war. Just try to imagine this. A whole backup country, a hidden industrial heartland, all built in total secrecy and designed to survive an apocalypse. Yeah, this is the story of what's known as the Third Front, an absolutely massive project that completely reshaped China, all in the shadow of a war that, thankfully, never actually came. So, what on earth was the logic behind this colossal undertaking? What was its true cost? And, maybe most importantly, why is this old Cold War idea making a comeback right now? Let's dig in. Okay, so to really get this, our story starts not with a date, but with a place. And that place is Project 816. This was meant to be the heart of the Third Front's nuclear ambitions. One facility, codenamed Project 816, was an underground complex. I mean, this thing was so vast it could basically house a small city, all of it carved out of a mountain by 60,000 soldiers. And get this, after all that work, it never produced a single gram of plutonium. Today, it's a tourist attraction, all lit up with neon lights. It's just surreal. And it makes you wonder, right? What kind of threat could possibly justify this massive and, in the end, totally wasted effort? Well, to get inside their heads, we have to rewind to the mid-1960s. This was a time of extreme geopolitical tension for China. So if you put yourself in Mao Zedong's shoes, China looked like it was surrounded. You've got the United States moving into Vietnam to the south, and the Soviet Union, now a hostile enemy, to the north. And both of them have nukes. He was absolutely convinced a surprise attack wasn't just a possibility, it was coming. So Mao's big fear was that the First Front, the developed industrial coast, would just be wiped off the map in a surprise attack. His solution? He ordered the creation of a totally self-sufficient industrial base way out in the Third Front. It was meant to be a place to retreat, survive that first hit, and then keep fighting a long, drawn-out war. And that kind of thinking led to the core doctrine of this whole campaign, which was, let's be honest, a logistical nightmare driven purely by military strategy. See, it wasn't just about building factories, it was about making them completely invisible and indestructible. And this military-first approach, it sent construction costs through the roof. We're talking sometimes 30 times more expensive for projects they decided to build inside caves. There was this slogan at the time that really captures the spirit. Good people and good horses go to the Third Front. And under that banner, the party mobilized something like 15 million people, workers, technicians, their entire families, basically uprooting them from developed cities and shipping them out to the rugged, undeveloped middle of nowhere. And this paranoia-fueled campaign, well, it came at an absolutely staggering price, both in money and in human lives. Okay, get a load of this. For nearly 10 years, defense spending, which was pretty much all for the Third Front, ate up an incredible 40% of China's entire national budget. That's even more than they spent during the Korean War. The total cost was over 200 billion yuan. That was a fortune back then, and it's equivalent to trillions today. It basically crippled China's consumer economy for a whole generation. And the guiding principle for the people doing the work was simple: produce first and consume later. What that really meant was that millions of workers lived in these really basic Spartan conditions. We're talking canvas tents, mud huts, for years. They had almost nothing, all while building these massive, high-tech factories in the middle of nowhere. And this really shows the campaign's biggest flaw. Military logic just completely steamrolled any kind of economic sense. It led to this colossal waste all over the country. You had a few isolated successes, like Panchihua, but they only survived because they just happened to be built in economically viable locations. And frankly, that was mostly by accident. So the big question is, what happened to this secret industrial empire when the threat of war finally faded? Well, we can pretty much map its legacy into three main categories. First up, you have the accidental successes. A handful of these projects, like the Panzihua steel complex, were just lucky enough to be built near rich natural resources. Because they could actually operate at a profit, they survived the switch to a market economy. And today, they actually form the industrial backbone of inland China. Then you have the relics. These are the huge, super ambitious projects that were just too remote or too specialized to ever be useful for anything else. They've become these very visible reminders of the campaign's grand plans, kind of like concrete ghosts of a war that never happened. And now they're just these surreal tourist attractions. But, the biggest and probably the most tragic legacy is this vast landscape of ghost factories. As soon as China's market reforms kicked in, these factories, which made no economic sense, just couldn't compete. They were simply abandoned. It represents billions in wasted money and, more importantly, millions of disrupted lives. But here's the kicker. This isn't just a history lesson. The strategic logic of the Third Front? It's actually being revived today. And this right here is the key takeaway. China is once again building a backup plan. The government is shifting critical assets inland to protect them from what they see as foreign threats. The fear has just evolved. It's not about nuclear bombs anymore. It's about economic sanctions and high-tech warfare. The Third Front really shows a willingness to pay an almost unbelievable price, economically and in human terms, all for the sake of national security. And as we see history starting to echo itself, it really makes you wonder about the calculations being made today and what kind of hidden costs they might come with.